In the realm of competitive gaming, the battle between 2D and 3D fighters has been ongoing for decades, captivating the hearts and minds of gamers worldwide. While 2D fighters have undeniably held their ground, it's time to recognize the evolution and innovation of 3D fighters. This argument will shed light on why 3D fighters are better due to them having a more immersive, strategic, and diverse experience compared to their 2D counterparts. It's important to acknowledge that the perspective presented in this video will be based on personal viewpoints, preferences, and experiences, with some facts, giving you why I believe 3D fighters to be better. Take note, I love both 2D and 3D fighters, so with that out of the way, I'll give you a little background about myself so you will have an understanding of where I'm coming from. As a kid growing up, I didn't have a strong interest in traditional sports like soccer, basketball, or football. Instead, I was drawn to martial arts because you can beat the crap out of people. Due to my father being a martial artist and teaching me and my siblings. Unlike team sports, which can be competitive and focused on winning, martial arts emphasize personal growth, discipline, and skill development. Martial arts always offered me a unique way to engage in physical activity that went beyond the typical sports culture. I found the movements, forms, and techniques fascinating, and I enjoyed the mental and physical challenges they presented. Additionally, martial arts often has a rich history which appealed to my interest in learning and self-improvement, kind of like your typical anime protagonist. My affinity for fighters can be attributed to my background in practicing and watching martial arts movies. This unique combination of experiences has likely contributed to my love for the fighters genre. My upbringing in martial arts and exposure to martial art movies like Game of Death, The Five Deadly Venoms, Once Upon a Time in China, and Drunken Master have shaped my liking for fighters. With that out of the way, this brings me to my first argument. Connection to realism and graphics. Having practiced martial arts, I understand the intricacies and physicality of combat. 3D fighters often aim to simulate real-world martial arts techniques and movements, making it easier to relate to the character's actions. The lifelike animations and physics in 3D fighters mirror the techniques practiced or seen in movies, providing a sense of authenticity that resonates with real-life martial arts. For example, the stance Pubu is a stance found in traditional Chinese martial arts, a stance you will find in 3D fighters often, used by characters like Ling Xiaoyu and Helena Douglas. The way the characters position into these stances gives an organic and realistic feel, with the moves looking elegant as they do in real life, making the combat look and feel more believable. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying I want my fighting games to be as realistic as possible. If that were the case, I would be arguing that the UFC games are the best, and those would be at the bottom of my list when it comes to the fighter game genres. But the balance between realism and fiction is a nice touch. 3D fighters indeed have the advantage of representing characters and environments in a more spatially realistic manner. This is not to say that 2D fighters can't have an accurate representation, but it is a fact that 3D fighters have a clear advantage when it comes to fluid and lifelike animations and visuals. Let's take this fight scene from Fist of Legends and compare it to the gameplay of Dead or Alive. Then you take a game like Mortal Kombat 1 and compare it. It doesn't have the same impact. Sure, the game looks amazing in its own right, but it does not capture the fluidity and feel that the third dimension can capture. Yes, I did this on purpose to show you a 3D fighter from 2001 compared to a 2D in 2023 using 3D graphics. 3D fighters have revolutionized the realm of fighting games, adding depth and excitement that 2D fighters simply cannot replicate. The introduction of 3D graphics also allows for more complex and fluid movements, showcasing intricate combos, devastating special moves, and realistic physics simulations. Facial expressions, body language, and details are captured with greater fidelity, enhancing the emotional resonance of the battles. Overall, 3D graphics elevate fighting games, creating an environment where players can truly step into the shoes of their chosen fighters and experience intense, visually captivating showdowns. Making the games look better, this can also be seen as 2D fighters started to use 3D models in their games. Notably, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat have done away with 2D models and switched to 3D, and they are the pioneers of the 2D fighter genre. This fact alone shows that in relation to character models and graphics, 3D is the ideal way to go. The shift to 3D enables developers to incorporate realistic physics into the gameplay. From accurate collision detection to lifelike momentum and physics-based interactions. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some stunning-looking 2D fighters with amazing graphics and animation like Guilty Gear Strive, Dragon Ball Fighters, and Skullgirls, but it still doesn't compare to what 3D models can achieve. I know some people will say graphics and animation isn't everything, and you're right, but let's not pretend that graphics mean nothing. At the end of the day, graphics are one of the selling points, and it is the first thing people will see in the presentation of your game. There is a reason why both Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat has switched over to 3D models. It is overall more appealing and will draw in more fans. Gameplay. 3D gameplay in fighting games offers a multi-dimensional layer of strategic depth that surpasses the confines of traditional 2D mechanics. The addition of the third dimension introduces complex spatial awareness, allowing players to sidestep, dodge, and utilize a wider range of movement options to outmaneuver opponents. The Z-axis introduces verticality, enabling aerial combat and multi-level interactions that add an extra layer of tactical complexity. Moreover, the strategic depth in 3D fighters introduces a new dimension of strategy. The ability to move in and out of the foreground and background adds a layer of complexity to battles. Players can utilize space to their advantage, creating opportunities to evade attacks or gain a positional advantage. This spatial dimension forces players to think in 3 dimensions, leading to deeper tactical decision-making and rewarding those who can master the art of positioning. In 2D fighters, you have a limited range of motions and you can only make a character whiff by spacing, backing up, or jumping. In a 3D fighter, you can make your opponent whiff by spacing, backing up, jumping, ducking, and sidestepping. This newfound freedom opens up opportunities for more dynamic and unpredictable battles, as fighters can strategically position themselves within the environment, leveraging obstacles to their advantage. In Dead or Alive, you can knock your opponent through tables and chairs, making it possible to extend one's combo and overall damage. And in a game like Soul Calibur, you can knock your opponent out of the ring and get a ring out, resulting in you winning the match, making positioning a more in-depth concept. Yes, some of these elements are starting to be adopted by 2D fighters, but it is not as impactful and is mostly done by NetherRealm Studios games, notably the Mortal Kombat and Injustice games. While in 2D fighting games, the significance of stages is relatively diminished compared to other game elements. Stages often serve as fixed backdrops without interactive or dynamic features that significantly impact gameplay. Unlike in 3D fighters where the environment can be used strategically, 2D stages generally lack these interactive elements. As a result, the primary focus of 2D fighters remains on character moves, combos, strategies, and player-versus-player interactions, with stages mainly providing visual variety rather than substantial gameplay variations. This gives 3D fighters overall more depth and options when it comes to gameplay. In 3D fighting games, attacks are often categorized based on their height or positioning relative to the opponent. This classification includes high, mid, and low attacks, each serving different purposes in combat. High attacks are strikes that target the upper body and head of the opponent. These attacks are blocked by holding the guard in a standing position. High attacks are often quick and can be used to pressure opponents, interrupt their actions, or initiate combos. However, they can be easily blocked by opponents who are also in a standing position, so using them strategically and mixing them up with other attack types is crucial. Mid-attacks, also known as medium attacks, target the middle portion of the opponent's body. These attacks typically hit opponents regardless of whether they are crouching or in a low guard. Mid-attacks are essential for breaking through opponents who rely heavily on crouching guards to defend against low attacks. They can also be used to catch opponents who are trying to duck under high attacks. Mid-attacks are a versatile tool in a player's arsenal and are often used in combo starters and pressure strings. Low attacks are strikes that target the lower body or legs of the opponent. These attacks are blocked by holding the guard in a crouching position. Low attacks are useful for bypassing an opponent's standing guard and dealing damage to them while they are not crouching. They are also effective against opponents who are trying to execute high or mid attacks. However, low attacks can be anticipated and blocked if the opponent is already in a crouching guard. Balancing the use of high, mid, and low attacks is critical for maintaining an unpredictable offense and creating openings in the opponent's defense. Skilled players mix up these attack types to keep their opponents guessing and unable to anticipate their next move. Understanding your character's moveset and knowing when to use each type of attack can lead to successful strategies and dynamic gameplay in 3D fighters. While in 2D fighters this concept does not exist, due to 2D fighters not having the 3 attack heights, crouch blocking will defend against most attacks except overhead and throws. This will have you crouching 80% of the time in 2D fighters because that is the definitive way to defend. Overheads in 2D fighters are usually used by attacking while jumping. Some characters have grounded overheads, but grounded overheads usually can't be used as a combo startup, while in 3D fighters a mid-attack is way more rewarding and dangerous because it can be used as a combo startup. This is not to say the gameplay is very simple, but it overall gives for fewer options when it comes down to strategic depth. Casual friendly. 3D fighters inherently possess qualities that make them more accessible and friendly to casual gamers. Firstly, the diverse range of character movements and interactions in 3D space feels more intuitive to newcomers. The natural feeling of moving characters forward, backward, and side to side, combined with the added vertical dimension, creates a sense of freedom that's easier to grasp, even for those less familiar with complex inputs. For the very hard casual players, button mashing feels a lot better in 3D fighters. Yes, this is a positive, some might think it's a negative. The more a fighter can appeal to all kinds of players down to the button mashing, up to the competitive players, means it is going in the right direction. You have to keep in mind that a large amount of fighting games are supported by casuals. They should not be dismissed, and they keep your favorite fighting game series running. So we respect all players, even the button mashers. Proof of this is that a lot of 2D fighting game series is trying to make it easier for casual players to pick up and play. Recently, Street Fighter VI introduced modern controls to bring in more casual players. The visual spectacle of 3D fighters can engage casual players on a superficial level. The dynamic camera angles, cinematic special moves, and interactive environments often leave a memorable impression, regardless of the player's skill level. This instant gratification can be very appealing to casual gamers who may be more interested in enjoying the experience rather than mastering intricate mechanics. Many 3D fighters emphasize story modes, character development, and single-player content. These aspects cater to players who prefer engaging narratives and solo gameplay, allowing them to enjoy the game at their own pace without feeling the pressure to compete at a high skill level. Balancing 3D fighters presents a more manageable task compared to their 2D counterparts, primarily due to the intricacies of their gameplay mechanics. Firstly, the multidimensional environment in 3D fighters inherently adds an extra layer of strategy. Characters can sidestep, move in 3 dimensions, and interact with their surroundings, creating a greater variety of tactical options. This complexity naturally leads to a wider range of viable strategies, reducing the likelihood of a single dominant approach emerging. For example, close-range grapplers are some of the worst characters types in the 2D fighter space. Close-range grapplers often rely on landing their command grabs to deal significant damage. However, these grabs typically have short ranges and can be quite challenging to execute, especially against opponents who are skilled at maintaining distance. This puts the grappler player at a constant disadvantage, as they need to take significant risks to get in close and execute their moves. The effort required to get close often outweighs the damage potential, making the risk-reward balance skewed against them. Close-range grapplers often lack the intricate combo potential that other characters possess. Their gameplay revolves around landing a successful command grab, which typically results in a single hit or a short combo. This limitation can be frustrating for players who enjoy stringing together elaborate and flashy combos. This is due to the limited space in 2D fighters that leaves grapplers with few options. Zangief from Street Fighters is usually seen as one of the worst characters in the games due to 2D fighters having two ways of winning. To put it simply, win the ground game, and if your opponent can't get in, you will win the match. This is not to say this is the only way to win, but the most simplistic way to put it. Characters with good neutral attacks with some zoning options are usually good, and if you add in a DP and good anti-airs, this usually makes the character top tier. Juri, for example, is a top-tier character in Street Fighter 6, and she has all of the things I mentioned. This is not always the case, but most of the time the top-tier characters will have these in their toolkit. If you take a look at King from Tekken, he does not suffer from the same problems because the 3D dimensions add more variety to his playstyle and opens up more options, unlike 2D fighters. 3D fighters give grapplers more combos, so they aren't as predictable and are usually fun to play. Tina from Dead or Alive is another great example of a good grappler in a 3D fighter. She is on the slower side when it comes to speed, but her high damage and mix-ups from her high, mid, and low attacks with powerful launchers make her a great character. The vast array of character archetypes in 3D fighters supports a more balanced roster, with characters representing diverse martial arts styles, strengths, and weaknesses. The risk of certain characters becoming overly powerful is mitigated. This diversity encourages players to explore various characters, leveling the playing field and promoting balanced competition. Furthermore, the need for meticulous hitbox design and animation work in 3D fighters is magnified due to the freedom of movement. This meticulousness forces developers to identify and address potential balance issues early on, fostering a culture of attentiveness to the finer details of the gameplay. The dynamic camera angles and versatile movement options facilitate a deeper awareness of the battlefield. Players can better anticipate their opponent's actions and position themselves strategically, reducing the possibility of surprise moves or tactics that could lead to imbalances. The multidimensional mechanics, diverse character pool, meticulous hitbox design, and dynamic gameplay of 3D fighters synergistically contribute to an environment that is easier to balance than the more constrained nature of 2D fighters. This leads to a more engaging and equitable competitive experience, making 3D fighters a compelling choice for both casual players and serious competitors. The last point I want to mention, 2D fighters have tried their hand in the 3D realm, notably Mortal Kombat, with Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon, the king of fighters with the Maximum Impact series, which were my favorite KOF games, but that's a video for another day. Even Samurai Showdown. Not all of them were good, but this fact alone shows how impactful the 3D fighter genre has been. You will not see a 3D fighter becoming a 2D fighter. Why? Because, like it or not, it would be considered a downgrade for the most part. This isn't me trying to belittle or hate 2D fighters because I love the 2D fighter genre. I'm only pointing out the fact that 3D fighters inherently seem superior in general comparison to the average gamer. And if a game like Tekken switched to 2D, it would be looked down upon and would enrage a lot of fans. That is it for the video. I wanted to make it longer, but it would have been an hour long, so I made it brief to not bore people to death. It started to get very detailed, and I had to cut a lot out. Maybe later I will make a part 2 that is more detailed if you guys are interested in that. Anyway, this is mostly a subjective opinion. Let me know how you guys feel about this in the comments section down below. I am curious about your takes and opinions. Are you Team 3D or Team 2D? You could be both. Don't forget to subscribe and all that good stuff if you want to see more videos, and I'll catch you all later.